So in
Mm-hmm.
terms of my coaching, well, a big part of it is like really making sure that I am, working my practice so that I can show up
Mm-hmm.
at my best. And then as far as within my coaching practice, I will often start my sessions with some kind of short grounding meditation if my clients are open to it.
Welcome to the Meet Your Mental Helper podcast. I'm Jim Weisbecker, the host. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in Arizona who loves to talk shop with colleagues. And when I do, I'm always amazed at how much knowledge they have. And I think to myself, they should have a podcast or they should be on a podcast. But they're not celebrities. They're counselors, therapists, psychologists, life coaches of all type who grind it out every day in our community to help us grow and to help us heal. Without further ado, let's meet today's mental helper. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Consult a qualified professional for your needs. Views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and not necessarily those of Meet Your Mental Helper Podcast LLC or its affiliates. We are not responsible for actions taken based on this content. Welcome to the Meet Your Mental Helper podcast. And today we have with us Becky Roberts of Becky Roberts Coaching. Becky is a mindfulness and somatic wellness coach as well as an artist. After working for 25 years in education, Becky had the opportunity to pursue art full-time and found that she missed her work as a teacher supporting students' learning and growth. As an avid meditation and mindfulness practitioner, Becky decided to return to school to deepen her understanding and practice of mindfulness and meditation in hopes to also help others. The experience, knowledge, and skills that Becky has acquired through life and through her time as a teacher and a student have enabled her to support others as they create purpose and meaning in their own lives. Becky has 3 grown daughters and lives in Portland, Maine with her husband and 2 dogs. Welcome, Becky. So, one of the things I noticed is you help women navigating change, transition, or new life challenges. What kind of changes do your clients typically face, and how do you support them in that?
Mm. Yeah, it could be anything from, navigating a divorce to a career change. It could be a parent who's struggling with a son or a daughter, um, or it could be a challenge like anxiety or stress that they're trying to um, find some healing and balance from.
Sure. And when I think of women navigating change, I often think of like empty nesters or that new part of their life where kids are gone and they're like, what do I do? What should I, you know, that feeling of, at least that's what I hear sometimes with clients. They'll say, I have this feeling of not being needed anymore. Do you run into that too? Or
Yeah, I have recently worked with a woman who had lost her husband about a year and a half ago, and then became an empty nester as her youngest went to college, and she was going through massive change. And she sought my services out as a way to kind of figure out, articulate kind of where she wanted to be in her life. And
Mm-hmm.
then, she and I worked in partnership to try to help her move from where she was to where she wanted to be.
yeah, those are 2 huge changes, loss of a
Mhm.
partner and then that kid going off and flying, right?
Right.
A lot of
Right.
stuff all at once. I notice you
Mhm.
talk, one of the things that you do a lot with is inner wisdom. Can you talk a little bit more about accessing one's inner wisdom and how you might use that?
Yeah, I see my practice as really that's kind of like the central piece of my practice actually is just working with clients to help them kind of clear away the fog or the clouds, so that they can gain access to, what I believe is within all of us, this kind of wise, healing essence within us that, where we can get the guidance and the answers that we need, on how to move forward. So a lot of my work is informed by internal family systems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I found through my own personal work as a client, with internal family systems, and then also going to school and learning quite a bit about it, and then incorporating it in my practice, I just found that it really dovetailed so nicely with the concepts of mindfulness and also the somatic work.
Mm-hmm.
And from the IFS standpoint, we all have, a multitude of parts, but we also have this
Mm-hmm.
core self that, IFS talks about the 8 C's that's has clarity, that has calm, that has confidence and courage and compassion. And so really I see my work as helping my clients gain access to that place within themselves.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I always think of IFS for therapy, you know, but
Mm.
I could see where it would be really valuable doing that parts work with coaching and finding, how, for example, you were mentioning the woman earlier who lost her partner and then is an empty nester. Is that like in a situation like that? How would you work with IFS or parts, just kind of in a general way?
Um, yeah, well, like on a
Or
specific.
it might not be specifically her, but in a maybe
Mhm.
it's a situation where I'm thinking of taking a job, but I also don't know if I have the confidence to take this new position. That would be one I could see out there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was very much a piece of what this woman's work was, and the way that you said that, I have a part of me that doesn't
Right.
know if I'm confident. So there's a part of you that has like this certain amount of doubt, and then this other part of you who really wants to pursue this. And it's really a matter of like exploring those parts, bringing
Hmm.
curiosity and compassion to those parts, and learning from them. And, for example, this woman suffered from quite a bit of anxiety and depression, through her, through the last couple of years of so
Sure.
much loss. And so, really, helping her kind of, I guess, gain clarity around those parts, um, and understand them kinds of takes the teeth out of it. So, it's I feel like it's kind of human instinct to want to push those parts away,
Hmm.
or resist them or run from them. And so IFS in a way is somewhat counterintuitive in that way,
Hmm.
where they encourage, they say all parts are welcome, and all
Hmm.
parts are really very well intentioned. So,
Hmm.
approaching these parts and engaging with these parts from a place of compassion, from a place of curiosity, which is, part of self energy, can be really healing and can help that part kind of calm and clear the way a little bit, while also strengthening that um, access
Mm-hmm.
to that place where, ultimately we want to be operating from.
Mm-hmm. So there, like with a part that says a part of me doesn't think I can do this, might be a protective part or means well from something in the past, right? That didn't go well. And they're saying, hey, I need to stop you from doing this, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, those parts very, very much are protectors, and their intention is to do just that. And, sometimes those parts can have some pretty extreme behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And in IFS, they divide those parts into two categories: the managers and the firefighters. And the managers may be, um, like per- perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
or a part of you that really feels the need to control things, or the people pleaser, whereas a firefighter will come in like in a crisis, kind of to put the fire out so that we don't
Mm-hmm.
have to feel the pain of an unresolved wound from the past. So example of a firefighter would be, addiction,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholism, drug addiction, things like that. And those
Gotcha.
wounds that, we have picked up um, could be, from our childhood, that just overwhelmed us, and were left unresolved and unhealed. And then these parts developed to protect us from feeling the pain of that. And,
Mm-hmm.
IFS is so, in my opinion, is so effective as a therapeutic model.
Mm-hmm.
In and I believe you do quite a bit of trauma work with your clients. Is that right?
Yeah, I do a lot of that with Heart Mather and then with EMDR. But I
Yeah.
I have some brief experience with IFS, and I think it's I definitely wanted, and you're motivating me now to get back into it. But because so often we say that phrase, a part of me wants Thai food, a part of me wants Mexican food or whatever. we're always using we're always using that part thing, or a part of me
Yeah.
thinks this is going to be a disaster. A part of me thinks I got to try it anyway. We're always using that phrase in everyday language.
Right. And I began to notice that just in meeting with clients, that often came up, because um I'm obviously such a fan and believer of IFS, but there was like this, it's been traditionally used in therapy. Um
Mm-hmm.
so to try to incorporate that into my coaching um was at first pretty interesting,
Mm-hmm.
because as although there's some overlap there between coaching
Sure.
and therapy, it's really two distinct services. So as a coach, I'm not working with my clients to go back and heal those traumas from childhood. That's beyond my skill set. They would go to see, you or someone like
Right.
you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I started noticing in my sessions that parts were coming out. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just started to bring that curiosity to the parts, and inviting my clients to bring their curiosity to these parts, instead of fighting with them or resisting them, which, really tends to make them louder and more extreme, and
Right.
um, they can be destructive, even though that they're well intended.
That's a really good point. I've started several new projects, and there's a lot of parts noise going on in my own head. You know, a lot of parts noise going. One part saying this is going to be great, another part saying, you're going to be wasting a lot of time. Another part saying, um, well, you'll learn something. So there's all these different parts, and it's like a board meeting of noisy folks, and some are positive, some aren't. But isn't kind of
Absolutely.
IFS a little bit, you're kind of getting those parts all on the same goal, or giving them permission to, you know, hey, here's what we all want to do. Instead of spending your time warning me, spend your time now. We're talking to that part that might be a protective part. Spend your time now, helping us do whatever. You help us be more positive, or that's your new job. Is am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think like the goal, one of the goals in IFS is to be, working, practicing, operating from this place of core self, from this place of 8 C's. And, in IFS, they say you want to speak for your parts and be self led, with a capital S, instead of
Mm-hmm.
parts led. So, by bringing curiosity to these parts and engaging with them from a place of compassion, and understanding, that it kind of helps those parts calm down, and really over time those parts will either become dormant, or they may, like you said, find another job that they
Okay.
like better, that serves the whole system better.
Mm-hmm.
um, so from a coaching standpoint, that's kind of how I work
Yeah, it
with
sounds
clients.
such a great idea. Yeah, I've never thought of IFS in that way, but it's so applicable. Because when you're
Really
coaching, you're looking at goals, you're looking at moving your life forward, and parts are so involved in that.
so involved, and as you said, you have you have multiple parts kind of talking at you as you're trying to move forward in your life. And if when we slow down and really pay attention and become aware of those parts, um they have important things to say to us and to
Mm-hmm.
show us. And I often think about it as like in a an external family system. um, Family members each really want to be seen and be heard and understood and accepted. And it's really similar with the internal family system,
Mm-hmm.
where these parts really want to be seen and heard and understood. And if we can do that from that place of calm and compassion and curiosity, it can really bring quite a bit of healing and a new perspective, really,
Yeah.
to the situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that self-awareness, where somebody is, and maybe this is my therapy background, but somebody's saying that one part's warning me that this is going to be like the time I got kicked off the baseball team in, you know, 8th grade. This is going to be like the time you lost that first job. And I've seen all these things happen. I don't want, I don't want to see you go through this again. Again, that's
Right.
maybe my therapy part, is bringing up the most negative parts. But I can see where if you have that self-awareness as you're moving forward on a new goal or a new project or life value, that um, that part might start sounding different to you.
Right. Right. And just that, you describing that part of that part's fear of you having to relive that pain of,
Hmm.
from the past. It's You can start to, once you hear that from a part, then you start to really form not only just compassion, but gratitude for that part, for working so hard,
Hmm.
to protect.
Yeah, yeah, good. That's a great point. And also, I think that self-awareness of calming, maybe telling the part, I appreciate it. I appreciate your warning me, but this isn't 8th grade baseball. This isn't that first job I lost or whatever. And we'll be okay. or maybe asking that part to take on a new role.
Right. Right. And I think the key is coming from that place of self energy. So from that place of calm, there's so much wisdom there. And I think when we can engage with those parts and really gain an understanding and some insight about why they operate the way they do,
Hmm.
um, then it can kind of help inform it. It just the system just becomes more integrated and more balanced, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right. And you mentioned, I know you do a lot with mindfulness. You mentioned this integrates well with that. Mindfulness is one of those things we hear a lot about. How do you use that, or how do you help people with mindfulness? Maybe give us your perspective on it. There's so many different definitions of mindfulness, and I think
Right.
some people think it's sitting with incense and their palms up and having a mantra, and that's maybe more meditation, but I think a lot of people visualize it as that. Um,
Mhm.
wh- what's your take on it?
Well, I guess I come from I think I've read every single one of Thich Nhat Hanh's books. I'm a big fan, and John Kabat-Zinn, um, who's done some amazing work around mindfulness and the research around all of that.
Hmm.
And his his definition, I think, is so simple and concise, and I don't have the exact words in front of me, but it's like being present and aware, um, on a moment to moment basis without judgment. So it's really about practicing presence in a non-judgmental way. Um, and there are 9 principles of mindfulness. So um, I practice them in my own life. I practice meditation. And it's about, for me, it's about trying to bring that into my daily life so I can operate at my best. So, like the 9 principles, some of the examples are non judgment, acceptance, trust, patience, letting go, non-striving, things like that. So
Hmm.
in terms of my coaching, well, a big part of it is like really making sure that I am, working my practice so that I can show up
Hmm.
at my best. And then as far as within my coaching practice, I will often start my sessions with some kind of short grounding meditation if my clients are open to it, because we tend to get very caught up
Hmm.
here
Especially with
and get
anxiety, right? Or
absolutely,
hmm.
yeah, it's like an endless mind loop sometimes, these
Hmm.
thoughts that come in
Totally.
and they block us from
Hmm.
really moving forward. So, mindfulness and also the somatic practices kind of help us quiet the mind and become more grounded in our body, where, I think that things become a lot more clear, and
Hmm.
there's a deeper wisdom that comes from that place.
Yeah, I like that. You mentioned one of them was letting go, just focusing on, I think
Mhm.
you said focusing on what's at hand non judgmentally. Um, all of that, certainly does have a lot to do with focus and with probably using those frontal lobes of your brain where all the logic takes place, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I mentioned earlier to you before we started this, I'm reading the book Mindfulness, the 25th anniversary edition by Ellen Langer, and she had a saying, and I thought it was really interesting. And some people might take it the wrong way, but I think it's really interesting. She said, "We only get disturbed by a question when there has to be a right answer or a wrong answer." And I thought, when you think about that for a minute, she goes, "We only get disturbed by questions when there has to be a really right answer or a really wrong answer." And I thought that's a really interesting thing. What do you think about that? Applying that to different things, because they're, we start to put everything in a context. This has to go a certain way or else,
Hmm.
versus just noticing what we're getting out of the challenge.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's kind of like being in this more open, curious place, it sounds
Mm-hmm.
like, where um yeah, it brings together presence and acceptance and just kind of, yeah, allowing things to unfold as they naturally will without forcing it.
Right.
Um yeah.
Um, so what would be an example of, um, and I'm just thinking right off the bat of anxiety. And again, I'm probably coming from my therapy point of view, where people's thoughts are racing and they're not really able to zero in on that goal they're working with you on. So how would you, let's say I'm that person, how would you, roughly start me on the right path with mindfulness, or get me, if I say to you, Becky, my brain's filled with just thousand thoughts a second, and I can't,
Mm.
and I'm so freaked out about this upcoming change I think I need to make. Where would mindfulness come in on that? How would you approach it with that?
Well, I think I would definitely ask if you would be comfortable doing a grounding meditation to start, to see if we could just kind of quiet that just a little bit and become more aware of our bodies.
Okay.
Um, so and more present, because generally when we think of anxiety, it really generally has to do with the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's anxiety about fear about something happening or not happening or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So simply bringing in presence can, just that right there can begin to soothe that, quieting the thoughts, bringing, getting grounded in the body, bringing ourselves right into the present
Mm-hmm.
starts to quiet things down just a little bit. And then, it's then maybe that's where it kind of dovetails so nicely with IFS, because then from that place we can start to work with that part, that anxious part, and what its intention is, what it needs, what it wants to share. um and and then it's such a multifaceted process, I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
there's mindfulness and there's this parts work and this, and it just all can just work together so beautifully
Yeah, and I
to
could
help
see where
clear
you
that.
mentioned inner wisdom earlier, where just being
Mhm.
mindful can also help with tapping into that.
Right.
I call it a
And yeah,
probably my heart math training, but heart, what the heart's telling you.
yeah, yeah, even sometimes just doing that helps, doesn't it? Just,
Mm-hmm.
can you just stop for a minute, focus on your breath,
Mm-hmm.
focus on your heart, and ask, what's needed right now.
Right.
um Simple practices like that can be quite powerful. And practices, that was the other thing that I wanted to say. Practice
Yeah.
is the key word here, for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And, I see really my goal with my clients a lot of times is really um, helping them establish their own practice and their own way of um, practicing mindfulness or practicing engaging with their parts so that eventually we don't want our clients to be dependent on us. We want them to be able to be look to themselves, look inward. And it does take time. With anxiety, I have struggled with anxiety quite a bit in my life, and it's a process, and it is definitely a practice. That's a key word
Right.
there for all.
Yeah, I always tell clients, do you know how many people struggle with anxiety? And they'll say, no. I'll say, well, just look at the entire globe, and there's your answer.
Right.
Because, our brains, I think, going back to evolutionary times, it's wired for that survival instinct, and which is too prevalent now when we're not out hunting for our food or worrying about being eaten
Right.
by a dinosaur or whatever. So, but it's
Right.
still
Right.
we're still kind of wired that way. I definitely
Yeah.
believe in that.
Yeah, I do too. And I also believe in the idea of neuroplasticity, where that wiring can change over time with
Hmm.
practice, so that it's not necessarily our default, you know, as oftentimes it can be for people.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, there's that old saying, neurons that fire together wire together. You know.
Right. Right. Right.
So I'm a firm believer in that.
Me
Um,
too.
You also incorporate somatic practices, and this is something I work with to a degree, but I'm finding more and more aspects of this. Explain that a little bit. How do we tap into that somatic information?
Mm. Um, so in my sessions, you mean? How
Yeah,
how I
how do you use it like in your daily life, or because the body tells us a lot. I mean, the body mind connection is there, and sometimes it's the mind isn't so we're not cognitively understanding things, but we're feeling it in our body, or our body's trying to tell us something, whether we're holding tension in our neck or whatever. In my case, it'd be my stomach, but whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
So
right, and that's
how's that guided you in your own life, and how do you use it with clients?
yeah. Well, I think that I kind of started down that road because I've been a pretty avid runner my whole life, and
Hmm.
back when I was really I would say just I felt like I was just plagued with anxiety. Um, Running was such a soothing activity for me.
Hmm.
Um, and it really, and over time, I started putting it together. You know, I'm outside, I'm in nature, I'm moving my body, I'm focusing on your breath. When you're running, it's like
Hmm.
you're you're focusing on your breath, you're focusing on where you're putting your feet. You're really, really grounded in your body. And I just noticed over time that when I was running and after that, my anxiety just came right
Yeah.
down. It was like it was almost like an instant reset for me. And
Hmm.
so, people can find that with yoga, any kind of breath work. Um, and so I just am such a big believer in that, in just getting grounded in our bodies and out of our heads.
Hmm.
And in my practice, a lot of times that grounding meditation is about that. it's doing body scans, it's focusing on our breath, it's really trying to move our awareness into our bodies and not so much in our heads, because most of us, I think, in our society, we're very much in our heads all the
Yeah.
time. So, and it's out of balance. So practicing the somatic work can help, you know, create more balance in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found with my clients, I've done sessions both ways, where, you know, they'll come in and there's an upset, and we dive right into the session. And um but I found that starting the session with some kind of somatic work, some kind of grounding meditation,
Mm-hmm.
just makes the session so much more productive and meaningful and efficient, really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and then in terms of IFS again, you know, when you're engaging with parts, a lot of times, you know, the question is, well, where do you feel that part in your body? You know,
That's a good
you
one.
just mentioned in your stomach, sometimes you feel your that stress or that anxiety in your stomach. For some of us, it's in our throat, in our throats, in our shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so in that way, the somatic piece is very connected to that
Mm-hmm.
piece as well. And it's really important. And, you know, it does have something to tell us. You know, if you're walking home at night alone and you just get this feeling of dread in your stomach,
Right.
or you know, you feel like chills running up your arms or
Mm-hmm.
something, it's really it's going to benefit us to listen to that.
For sure. For sure. And
Yeah, that can be really helpful.
mm-hmm. They've done research with measuring electrical currents from the heart and how far it travels, and it's really interesting. And also in terms of like a radar effect, what you're sensing. You know, um,
Right.
one thing I was going to mention too about running or walking is, as an EMDR practitioner, is it you scan right to left. So when you're scanning right to left, the new research shows that engaging that optical nerve can relax the amygdala. And of course, that's our fight, flight, or freeze response. So people often say walking's so relaxing. I'm like, it's because you're naturally scanning right to left. Our we're wired to do that.
Right. That is really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've often been curious about it. I am not as familiar with EMDR. Um, you know, but I have experienced it for sure, and I understand the benefits are incredible. And I've often thought, like, if I'm out walking with my dog,
Hmm.
and I didn't think of it in terms of this eye movement, but that's so true. I was thinking of it more in terms of, you know, my feet hitting the ground, whether I am walking or running. I mean, is that
Hmm.
bilateral stimulation?
Yeah, and you know, sometimes we tap, and the
Right.
tapping hacks that eye movement. And so does audio, like left, right, beeps. All
Right.
can. The eye movement's the most powerful, and so it's kind of a. And you know, I use this with clients who have panic attacks. They'll say, "I was at the grocery store. I just left my basket and ran out." And I always ask them, "Where were your eyes?" And they'll say, "Well, what are you talking about?" I'll say, "Well, where were your eyes when you were in the grocery store?" Well, I just kept them focused on one thing. And I go,
Uh,
when you're in a tunnel, you can't see everything else. You actually get more panic, right? I said, next time you go to the grocery store, you know, don't be weird about it, but just scan, just allow yourself to scan. Even if you don't like being in there, allow yourself to scan right to left. And it's so funny because they'll come back for the next session and go, I was in the store for over an hour. And I just, because I kept scanning and I didn't feel the need to run out, or I didn't feel, you know, just doing that simple
that's
change.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's
Uh-huh.
really amazing. And it seems like I was thinking when you were saying that, that whole idea of it being kind of human nature to resist that, to resist the um, and really get really tight and focused and resist that
Mm-hmm.
anxiety or that or whatever, and to kind of soften and open and do that gazing or the eye movements or scanning. Is that what you said around
Yeah,
the store?
just allow your eyes to naturally, because I guess we do it
Mhm.
naturally when we walk, but it's when we short circuit that natural response. And but naturally we our eyes will move right to left as we're seeing our scenery, and the reason for that is just to kind of take it in and know what we're coming up against, so that keeps that
Right,
frontal lobe, that logic going. But when you go into
right,
tunnel vision, when you're just looking through a tube, you really don't know what's out there, and that makes it even worse when you think about it. you know
right, right.
that's my
And I'm
theory.
thinking, yeah, just no, no, I see that, and I would. It's so interesting, and it's
Hmm.
that in that tightness, that constriction. I think the resistance to it that yeah, it all makes it so much worse and so
when
much bigger.
And sometimes, like, it's still nice here in Arizona, but my wife and I will take walks, and not and it's great. I'm not. I don't want to get in trouble with her, but sometimes when I walk alone, I really sort out things more. When I just am
Mm,
walking by myself and thinking about stuff, and I know I think a lot of people do, but that's probably has a lot to do with it. You know, is that
it
right to
makes a lot.
left?
Yep, yep. Yeah, I found some of my most like creative, productive times are when I'm out in nature, running or
Mm-hmm.
walking. Um, I just stopped wearing earbuds, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
way back when I was running, I would have the music in
Oh
and
yeah.
just be going. And then once I kind of got on this mindfulness thing and this presence thing and
Mhm.
um feeling the benefits of like really just basically moving my body in nature without
Yeah.
distraction. It's like I pulled the earbuds out and boy, it just suddenly there's like became such a productive part of my day.
Mhm. And there's a lot of studies now about how nature um, regulates our nervous system. Just being out, feeling the whatever the temperature is against our skin. There's of course, a lot of studies on sunlight and how beneficial it is to mood, and just hearing the birds or whatever. there's a
Yeah.
lot of there's a lot of
Yeah.
valid studies that show it reduces depression,
Hmm.
reduces anxiety and whatnot. So, I mean, what a crazy concept, right? Going out in the nature.
I know the force feeding and all of that, but I mean, it makes such sense to me. It's people are so busy, in their lives with their work, with their families, and some of us don't get outside. And
Hmm.
I think there is really a direct connection to that, to the amount of anxiety that people and stress that people experience in life today and the lack of connection to nature.
Yeah.
Um,
There,
I I know just even going outside and focusing on my feet hitting the ground
hmm.
can be
No.
so calming.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. You're an artist. What kind of art do you do?
Um, I was a painting major in college, and I've kind of held on to that
Okay.
over the years. I love all kinds of art. I've done a lot with pottery, um, mixed media,
Hmm.
jewelry. I love it all. It's really like the process of creating um, that I feel addicted to, actually.
Yeah. Well, creativity definitely is a dopamine release, and
Mhm.
art, any type of creative endeavor is great for the nervous system, great for anxiety, great for depression, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm reading Martha Beck's new book right now, Beyond Anxiety, and she talks a lot about creativity. And, when I really started really learning about internal family systems, and I realized creativity, curiosity is one of the 8 C's. It's a way
Hmm.
in for me into that place, core self place. And I was so happy to learn that
Right.
because I raised 3 kids. I was a teacher for a lot of years, and my art really consistently was put to the bottom of the list. Um,
Hmm.
and then knowing that actually making creativity into more of a practice is benefiting every area of my life, including, my coaching work, because
Hmm.
it's helping access to that place.
Yeah, I was going to say that I could see where that would be really, you're coming at it with a lens that's, I guess, maybe more abstract in a way, but that's a superpower, I would think.
Mm,
Having that
yeah.
art, you're seeing somebody's situation. Maybe your lens is a little different than somebody else's because of that art component.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I do feel that the creativity and curiosity piece is a strength that I definitely bring in to my coaching practice. And
Hmm.
uh, it's a strength, but I feel like really it's just who I am. It's my interest. It's kind of how I operate. And like I said, the curiosity and creativity is one of the 8 C's, and realizing that can just ground me right in that place of core self where I believe I can be the most effective.
Yeah. When I first took EMDR and then we were practicing it on each other, so a lot of students would say, "Oh, I'm so nervous about this." And the instructor said, "Just be curious." And that was the first time I was really heard that. And I thought, how do you just be curious? Like my oldest daughter was going to a job interview the other day, and everyone gets stressed about job interviews. And I said, just be curious. I threw that at her. But when you think about it, if you go there from a curiosity standpoint, you're almost wide eyed and scanning and kind of going, what's this going to be like? What am I about to see? Oh, look. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's just right. I have found like that the times that I've brought curiosity to my own anxiety, or something that I'm nervous about, asking
Hmm.
myself questions like, I wonder what I'm going to learn.
Hmm.
I wonder where this is going to lead. I wonder what I'm going to learn here. Um, I wonder what surprises are going to,
Right.
unfold.
And that's a good
It
one for,
kind of,
go ahead.
yeah. No, I just feel like it kind of triggers that like
Hmm.
curiosity. And then, you know, really anxiety and creativity, anxiety and the core self piece, that they don't really coexist. It's not really possible.
Hmm.
So into that place can calm all of that so nicely.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like you can't have them both at the same time.
Yeah. And I've noticed that in my art. There
Hmm.
was a period of time, I think, when I was in college and just after college where I mean, just I felt so much pressure to
Hmm.
to like produce and to make it just perfect and just right. And um, that caused a lot of anxiety and stress. And I found that I had no access to my creativity. when I was
Mm-hmm.
in that place.
Yeah.
And once I was able to figure that out and to work with those parts,
Mm-hmm.
the perfectionist and the controller and those parts, and kind of quiet them down and come back into alignment with that curiosity and creativity, it was like things opened up and
Yeah, and
became
that
way
kind of goes
more.
kind of about that question I mentioned earlier. If there's a absolute right answer to my art or an absolute wrong answer to my art, I'm disturbed. This this bird I'm painting has to be a certain way, or but there's
Right.
something about imperfection that's part of art.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's always cool to see artwork that looks like a photograph, and you go, "Wow!" But there's also something to be said where you go, "This isn't 100% perfect, but I feel it. I still feel it like it's
Right.
perfect."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gives you that feeling, whatever that is.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and a feeling of, like, understanding and connection, with the person who's created that and what they're trying to, express.
Hmm.
That doesn't come from perfectionism and overly controlled, like, pieces of art that look like photos.
Right, right. No, that's for sure. I love going to museums and looking at art, and especially I love history, so I love to see like when somebody painted something in the 1400s or whatever. What was you can actually it's like a snapshot back into that world.
Oh, I know. So
Yeah,
true.
and it's like
I
wow.
remember, taking a class on Renaissance art. I mean, remember it just to this day, so
Yeah.
many years ago, and I felt that. I was like, it just blew my mind. Not only like how did they actually do that? You know,
Mhm.
with given materials and everything, but then also, yeah, it's just a peek into the life
Mhm.
back then and what that was like. So
Before cell
super
phones.
interesting. Yeah, exactly.
Before all of that. Yeah. Um Becky, what without mentioning names or violating anyone's confidentiality, can you give us an idea about maybe a success story that's really ignited your passion, maybe with guiding somebody or helping them with life changes?
Sure, yeah. Um, what comes to mind is, a younger woman that I started working with. Um, you know, Originally, as I started coaching, I had this vision of working with middle-age, older women, going through transition, and this young woman contacted me, and she's in her mid to late 20s, I believe. And boy, the work that we have done together has been so inspiring. And she came to me at a time that was really difficult for her. She had graduated from college, put in several years of work in her field, decided it wasn't going to work, but had saved a lot of money,
Mhm.
hard work, and went in with a friend and opened a business. And by the time that she had contacted me, the business and the friendship had completely fallen apart. She had lost her entire savings. It
Wow.
was
Mhm.
Yeah, she was really, in a difficult place. Lots of anxiety,
Mhm.
depression, and just really having a hard time functioning.
Sure.
And, boy, over time, just working with her around the mindfulness principles, working with her, with the somatic practices and with IFS, brought her a lot of clarity. And this young woman also I just want to mention has been working with a therapist at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, to me, like, whoa, that's a powerhouse of a way to kind of heal and be able to move forward in your life. And
Yeah.
um so it was definitely a process. It was a process of
Mm-hmm.
like calming, calming the anxiety, calming the mind loops, um engaging with those parts from a place of curiosity and compassion. We start every session with the grounding meditation, and boy, she is an incredibly hard worker
Mm-hmm.
and very committed to moving forward in her life. And it is it's just been really amazing to be a part of that and to watch her go from um really a pretty serious struggle
Mm-hmm.
to now being really excited about her life. You know,
That's
she's
really, that's awesome.
she's in a job that she enjoys. It's not a forever thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something that she enjoys, where she's making an income and it's allowing her to explore other opportunities and interests. And you
Back to
know,
curiosity, right?
exactly. Coincidentally, she's
Mm-hmm.
she's a very creative person, and she was in science in college and in the science field. And not to say that that's not creative, because I believe that
Oh
is
yeah.
quite creative in
Mm-hmm.
certain circumstances. But she's really kind of a hands-on create. She just likes to create things. And um it really kind of validated what I have said today and what I
Mm-hmm.
have been learning, what I really truly believe, that that being able to engage with those things can kind of bring us back to alignment and back to our
Mm-hmm.
own freedom.
Yeah, that self-awareness is so powerful.
Mhm.
Is there
Right.
anything today that I you feel like you'd want to talk about that we've missed, or anything you'd want people to know that there may or may not be, but I just thought I'd ask you because we've covered a lot of really cool stuff.
Yeah, this has been amazing. This has been a really fun conversation. Um, I guess just that I just really think that we all are so much more alike than we are different. And that, people struggling don't have to do that work alone. And that it's really worthwhile, finding a therapist, a coach, somebody that, you know, you trust to work with,
Mm-hmm.
to help that recentering, realignment, and moving forward.
For sure. For sure. Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it up. And I just wanted to thank you, Becky, for sharing today. And we'll also post links to how to get a hold of you at the bottom of the podcast. And again, just thank you for sharing. Thank you for your time today. And we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you so much. This has really been fun, and it's been an honor to be here, Jim.
Well, it's been an honor talking to you. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you. You too.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of Meet Your Mental Helper. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. If you'd like to learn more about our guest, you can find them on our guest directory at meetyourmentalhelper.com. You can find their social media links to follow them and also ways to directly contact them. If you would like to be on the podcast, join our Meet Your Mental Helper network. And we have several memberships that support the work we do, that allow unknown experts to be seen. Look forward to hearing from you soon and see you at our next podcast.